Really good to be back after a little break. Good to see some faces that were with us last week at the neurodiversity event that Startup Grind Liverpool ran with Phil Burse from Adiap and our partners Barclays Eagle Labs. And we're delighted to be here tonight to do a sort of double header in the space of 2 weeks with something a little bit different this evening. Please welcome up to the front Ryan Lawrence and Declan Dowling from Betmate. Nice one, boys. Good to see you both. You're a quite hot property in the not just Liverpool tech ecosystem. Well, the business is hot property. Not just in the Liverpool tech ecosystem, but the UK tech ecosystem right now. You're recently hot off the back of Tech Nation regional winners through to nationals. And you've also just had some impressive publicity with Cedars about your investment raise that we'll get onto a little bit later on in the talk. But just for now, obviously we've got some Startup Grind veterans in the room, and we've got some new people as well. And we've obviously got quite a big online audience who we're recording this for. Tell us, what is Betmate? How did it come about? Why did you do it? What's your backstory?
Yeah, so me and Ryan met working at a startup incubator here in Liverpool. My background is in tech and his background is in product. You know, we were working together on other people's teams to go and learn kind of like lean startup and figure out what's best for that business. And then, you know, as all good businesses start, we went out for a few beers one night, started talking about our love for football, our enjoyment of gambling, but, you know, the pitfalls of it as well. And just started, you know, shooting some ideas around what could be different and what we could do ourselves to shake up that industry. Anything to add to that? Or?
No, yeah. Well, I mean, we focused a lot to begin with on kind of we learned about kind of lean canvases on value propositions, and we discovered kind of thousands of people that enjoyed these offline bets that are a bit more social between their friends, and also they weren't going to break the bank. You could have a lot more fun with. So we thought straight away there was an opportunity there that we could really look to kind of go into. But obviously the problem with betting is so regulated that it wasn't like we could start it straight away and start testing and iterating on ideas. It was something that slowly kind of crept in the back of our mind over the space of probably 2 years. So we've been working on the idea, theorising about it, and then finally took the plunger in, both quitting our jobs. Declan wasn't having over then, and I still was, and then decided to kind of take the plunge and kind of go for it.
At the best time possible as well. I think we quit our jobs about a month after the first lockdown. I'd just had a baby. It was probably the worst time decision ever, but you know, we don't regret where we are now because.
And there are some terrible stats about the industry normally. So I think what we always say to investors, people that are interested, is we will never do X. So we will never offer slots, we will never offer roulette, we will never offer casinos, and we'll never offer a sportsbook. And they're values that we're quite strong on. We always want Betmate to be more of a social, friendly, people versus people platform that adds genuine enjoyment and excitement to the sport that they love. And there's some staggering stats around the industry as a whole. I think slots players lose £10,500 a year on average, which is ridiculous. Casino players lose on average £1.70 in a minute. On Betmate, the max that we've ever allowed anyone to stake publicly has been £10. So it's really hard to kind of generate the level of losses that you see typically within the industries.
Yeah, I think our average customer spends £32 with us a month. You know, you could log on to any bookmaker and spend that per minute until you were skint, and then chase your losses on slots, casinos, instant wins, stuff like that. So, you know, we are a betting company, but we're very much anti-industry.
Yeah.
And we're trying to shake up that world. You know, a lot of the time people do see Betmate and think betting company, horrible industry, and you know, a lot of what we want to do is change that.
I was going to ask you about that because I mean, so we know each other quite well. You know, for full disclosure, I'm an investor in Betmate, first non-institutional investor in Betmate. Yeah. But one of the things you might not know about me being the interesting character that I am, is that I actually used to do a good bit of arbitrage on the old tennis, because think about tennis, it can't end in a draw. Someone's got to win, and I definitely wasted an entire summer, maybe back in 2015, 2016, just betting on like League 5 Croatian tennis amateurs or something like that. But it was brilliant. I mean, it got me my beer money for a few weeks. But obviously not the healthiest kind of financial or recreational pursuit, and has a lot of pitfalls, which is why it's such a regulated industry. When we were first introduced to each other, and you did that amazing dance on the Angel Network pitch online, which again we'll go into in a minute, I remember instantly thinking, this is a little bit like, this is harm reduction in a way, because there are people who can gamble and can throw an accumulator on and not really think too much on it, and there's the whole spectrum, or at least this is how it worked in my head. There was an entire spectrum of I just do a little bit of social with mates, and then everybody probably knows someone who every weekend is there putting multiple accumulators or parlays on, things like that, different sports. And then you've got people who really suffer at kind of what I would think of as another end of the spectrum. And I mean, that might be the wrong way to think about it, but that's just my kind of view.
It's interesting that you say that, like the antidote. We try and be careful around how we almost sell ourselves, but football and betting as a whole isn't really going anywhere. But I guess a platform like ours allows someone to have that same value add level of interest while they're watching a sport that they are going to watch anyway. But there's an ingrained cap on our platform. If you wanted to log on to Betmate and bet on every single thing that we offer over the course of a weekend, that might be 40 quid. You could spend that per minute.
It's you guys struck me. Yeah, I agree entirely. You guys struck me as like nicotine gum, right? I'm still getting my nicotine fix, but without all the smoking and the lung problems and the harmful chemicals and the tar, etc., etc. I mean, have you found it an obstacle? Have you found? I mean, I know certainly from my background. I mean, I can think of a few funds out there like ESG type things that might not be so warm towards working with you.
This is why we learned very quickly that more institutional investors had more of a problem, probably a mandate within their fund that said, we don't invest in a variety of industries, in which gambling is one of them.
It's pretty much porn, smoking, gambling,
yeah.
Something else horrible.
Yeah, and we were fortunate enough to actually have an institutional investor in our first round, Hatch Ventures, that kind of saw this as a space that we really could disrupt. And from that point, we've had some really good conversations with a few funds, mainly kind of those focused in traditional gaming, not gambling, but have very much targeted high net worth angel investors to really build our next rounds, because they obviously will not have the same stipulations as the industries they can't invest in.
We've had some of the best no's we could ever have from VCs as well. I think one VC said to us, if you anonymised your metrics and sent us to them, we'd be all over them. But it's the industry that we just can't go near because the fund has got a mandate against it. I think our cap table is, we've got one VC and maybe like 25, loads of angels. Because of that, it's easier to sell it to a person who doesn't have the restrictions and the red tape versus a fund.
I mean, even with Hatch that we kind of brought on board, we had to probably do quite a lot of convincing in terms of why this is a different play on the market. And I imagine we will get another institutional, larger institutional investor around the next round, and we'll probably have to do exactly the same job again.
Yeah, we actually pitched a gaming VC and changed the entire deck to say we are effectively a gaming company with a gambling element. We do a lot of free-to-play stuff. We do competitions where you can win physical prizes. It's not just all cash for cash. And if you're going to draw like a Venn diagram of gambling and gaming, we'd probably put ourselves squarely in the middle.
Yeah.
There's people out there that spend as much per month on Call of Duty and FIFA and Fortnite.
Yeah, DLC, right?
Yeah.
I last year when I was at Startup Grind Global, we had the directors, all of the kind of city directors who came. There was like 100 of us from all over the world, and we got our own little fireside chat, but with her name escapes me now. But She was super senior. She'd founded a couple of gaming companies. She was really senior. It might have been Zynga, Farmville. You know, like that series of games where it's not explicitly a game that you would spend. It's a free game, but the capacity for in-game downloads and monetization is basically just infinite. And you hear a lot of these stories about, you know, like an infant has got hold of mummy's credit card and they've banged it in, and next thing, yeah, okay, they've got like the M5 with the red tiger camo, but it cost the ma about $3,000. But that doesn't seem to get the same level of scrutiny. It's almost just like because you've got a gambling license.
So we've actually had like some very interesting comments on that. Won't name their name, but quite a large respected VC almost said to us, do you have a license, but in a way where if you don't have a license, and this is somewhat circumvented, would be very interesting. And they're talking to another company that do not have that license, and they're having discussions with them.
So because we've done it all above board and legitimately, then we're not of interest versus someone who's scared of the rules and hasn't got that regulatory oversight, which is very frustrating, as you can imagine.
Because like you could actually, in a lot of different countries, we can actually be sold as not a gambling company, and we wouldn't need a license. We'd be classed as a skill-based game
because it's not pure random chance. It's
Right.
It's probably worth also explaining what the games are.
Yeah, go into that a little bit. So yeah, so because you've just launched a new one, but let's start with Betmate like 1.0. What is that?
So we first of all tried to interview as many people as we could. Asked them the usual kind of problem interview questions, trying to not direct them down a particular flow, mainly talking about their frustrations with betting, between playing against their friends, what they enjoyed, what they didn't, and kind of found a really nice sweet spot for fantasy football.
It's probably worth noting as well, that isn't where we thought we'd end up. We had an idea in our own heads that we thought, you know, we would get the answers to say, go and do this. And, you know, the data from the probably 100 odd people that we interviewed told us a different story, and we went with the data as opposed to going with what we thought ourselves.
Yeah, it was really hard to try and map data as well, because you've got all these qualitative interviews that you're listening back to, and we tried to map them quantitatively on a Google sheet, and tried to, whenever there was a comment that sounded frustrated or negative or enjoyable, we tried to tag it with an emotional response, and then therefore you had all these emotional responses, the games they were talking about, and then where they ranked. So we could easily quite quantitatively say, from the qualitative data, can we actually build something around this?
And we've done this in a very basic way as well. You know, we had 100 phone calls, and then we played 100 phone calls, pressing pause, and then writing comments and tagging things. There was no fancy AI involved in this.
I was going to say, if only GPT-4 existed.
That's awesome. But that's I mean, that to me is indicative of the fact that you've come from that product background, because a lot of people would have just skipped that step, right? You're thinking about iteration, testing, data to support your decision making. People who maybe didn't have that incubator or engineering / product background might have just come in and thought, oh, I've seen a gap in the market, you know, let me get an agency and I'm going to get something built, and then find out painfully later down the line that actually, you know, they've got to adjust pretty hard.
We had these like 3 games listed, main ones that kind of came from it. One was turning fantasy football into a daily concept where you could bet kind of per fixture, and create your team just for that one singular fixture or set of fixtures, say, across the 3 PMs, not over the course of the season.
Which is what we've actually done.
What we've done. And then the second one was like a simple win, draw, win style bet that people would typically place with a bookmaker, an ACCA, that you'd have points, you'd score points per correct prediction, rather than having odds, so you wouldn't have to get everything right to win, just more than the people you were competing against. And then the final one was, I don't know if anyone's played Last Man Standing before, but essentially, if we'd start one today, I might, out of the Premier League, I might pick Liverpool to win against Chelsea. Declan might pick Chelsea, I thought you will. But if Chelsea win, then I'd be out. But Declan would carry on to the next round and wouldn't be able to pick them again. But we had those 3 games, and kind of fantasy football came out on top. So we decided to build that essentially first.
And in terms of getting it out there initially, so you built kind of version 1.0, you'd got some money from Hatch, myself, some other angels. You started to pop up in some clever ways in marketing amongst like fan bases, right? You didn't just throw a load of money on Google ads. You were quite technical and tactical about how you got out there into the market.
Yeah, we've tried a couple of things. So we've tried just traditional Twitter ads. We've got now a referral mechanism. So if you're enjoying Betmate and you want to invite Ryan, you'd both be incentivized when Ryan becomes a Betmate user based on your recommendation. And the big one is football podcasts, effectively content creators, and that's mainly Ryan's bag, so I won't stay around my idea.
Yeah, so essentially we partner with YouTube fan channels. So if you're a Liverpool fan, you might watch Redmen TV, and the idea would be that Redmen would promote the Betmate game that week, and would challenge their audience to compete against them in the Liverpool pot. And what they would do is they would go through kind of their process of building that team. So they'd say, okay, I'm going to pick Alisson in goal for this reason. I'm going to pick Trent over Robbo because I think he's got more chance of getting an assist. But then I'm going to pick Fabinho because I think he'll get a few tackles and interceptions, which we also score points for that. And then by the end of it, they'll kind of challenge their audience to play against them in the pot. We found that works as a really nice way to leverage an existing community. And also you've got a bit of loyalty towards the YouTube channel already as a customer. You trust them more.
Yeah, we're just piggybacking on the existing relationship, the existing trust they've got with their audience, as opposed to with Twitter, for example. You know, you'd be scrolling, see an ad, have to install it, it'd be completely new and foreign to you, so you'd have to go through the whole process, whereas if you're watching someone's podcast, you can be explained to a lot of it, and you know, you've already got the validation that someone you listen to every week is playing it and trust it, and they're going to be doing this as a regular thing. So it's not just acquisition, it's retention from the content creators as well.
There's no quote, isn't it? People buy people, not products.
Yeah.
So if you're kind of listening to someone that you trust really promote this brand, and also for us it works as great content, like things that we can actually post on Instagram, on Twitter, that will gain a little bit more kind of, I guess, impressions and likes and interaction than a standard tweet or a standard ad that we try and put out there.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. And you've kind of moved forward with those techniques and tactics to the point where you felt you've got enough traction to execute another investment round. Walk us through that most recent round and also the Seeders experience.
So the round, we started raising the round, we had the first money through in August or September last year?
It might be worth mentioning on the ASAs. So we raised our first round in June 2021 at like a fixed valuation, and then decided we wanted to raise again in kind of November, December, but we couldn't quite decide on the valuation, and we had a few questions from people, so we decided to do an ASA instead. And essentially that means that we could raise investment from angels, they could still get the EIS benefits, but their shares wouldn't be converted until the next investment round. But what we would offer them is a discount on what that valuation would be. So in this case, a 20% discount. So it meant that we were able to kind of still raise money and start gaining more and more traction, which then would help the valuation when we come to raise in August.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the ASA is total like 300k, was it?
Yeah, around there, 200.
Yeah, and then we had some follow-on from Hatch, who backed us first time round, and we ended up going on to Seeders with, I think, is it 510?
Yeah.
Before the Seeders launch. So we had the target of 600k. We went on with 510 before the Seeders launch, and then some of our existing investors who had come on board during the ASAs decided to follow on for that round. So before going publicly live on Seeders, we'd already raised 100%. You know, because you're doing crowdfund yourself at the minute.
I did.
It's a lot of smoke and mirrors. So we launched with over 100% funding. And then I think from the actual Seeders platform over the course of a month, we might have raised 70, was it?
So we raised 657 in total.
Yeah.
But then we probably, like Dex said, probably raised about 590 of that kind of off platform.
Right, okay.
Before going onto the platform.
And then the money that we do raise on Seeders has fees attached and some strings attached. So overall, it was a very interesting experience for us. You know, it took a lot of time to do. You know, we had to go and record the video. And in frustration.
It cost time and money as well.
Yeah.
We had to pay for the video, record the video. We had an external marketing agency do some outreach for us as well to high net worth investors, and then just the whole seeders experience. You've got people requesting your pitch deck, your financials every single day, all throughout the day. You've got forum threads starting, like how is this different than William Hill, all that kind of stuff that you're then going to spend time on. And sometimes it's time well spent, it's all public domain, so someone else might come along and read it later. Sometimes you might spend 2-3 hours replying to someone who wants to put 100 quid in, which, pound for pound probably isn't the best use of time.
Yeah.
So it was a long, probably month and a half.
We also thought we were really smart and that we would try and coincide the Seeders launch with the World Cup.
Yeah.
What that actually meant is we had no time at all, because we were trying to run around the UK with fan parks promoting Betmate, so we arranged all these deals, trying to do the normal day-to-day business stuff that you would do outside of partnering with fan parks. And then you've also got the Seeders raise on at the same time. So yeah, it was chaotic to say the least.
I had hair before the lockdown.
Only a little bit though. Yeah, it's tough on top of the daily activities of running the business. So, I'm heading up the marketing at the new firm I'm at, and I feel like at least fantasy football is a little bit relatable for people who want to crowdfund something. Put 100 quid in. I like the sound of that. Yeah. Maybe, William Hiddle and Paddy Power, that proves there's a market. Try explaining the tokenization of private illiquid assets on a blockchain to people on Seeders, mate.
Maybe that's a tactic though, just throw loads of words and no one understands.
Explanation. The videos help though, and your video in particular I thought was brilliant.
We had, to be fair, that was the best part of doing it. We had fun making that video.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to go and have a look, it involves us in a pub, us in a non-league football stadium, Ryan scoring a staged penalty past me.
Get the staged part in, of course.
Yeah. He missed like 3 off cameras, you know what I mean? And then he choked me out at one point as well, don't you? He was wearing his jiu-jitsu suit and I get lashed to the floor.
Got a gi. Rear naked choke.
I've got a questionable rear naked. As the resident jiu-jitsu expert, your placement was a bit off, but we'll roll with it. Go on.
There's been a couple of
Yeah.
months.
No, it's very impressive, and you've still got access to it, even though the campaign page is all done now, right?
Yeah, I think anyone can still go and see that video. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll keep that for years to come. So you've proved traction, you've raised money twice, you've begun to add new features, new game types. Talk us through your next sort of 6, 12, 18 months as it looks right now.
So we've just launched, I say, a couple of games. Over the last month we've added 3 new dimensions to Betmate. So previously it was always just fantasy football. We've now added a couple of simpler game types that is going after a more casual, like broader audience versus someone who might need to know who Brighton's left back is and stuff like that. So more casual games is what we've gone in the direction of. And those games that we've built now will allow us to move into other sport types as well. So currently Betmate is just all football. We've positioned ourselves so that over the summer we can look at extending the license that we've got to cover another sport. And we're looking closely at like boxing and MMA. So we're thinking to add like a simple kind of, over the course of a card, say like fighter A, fighter B, or a draw. Method of victory might be TKO, submission, points, round of victory, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Something simple like that over the course of a card, just so that we can move into another sport type. But what we've built actually allows us to go into other sports. So we're looking at like F1 and golf as well as like the fighting style sports. So we need to pick which one we're going to do next over the summer. That's most likely going to be boxing and MMA. And then really we want to execute on that, continue to grow the games that we've just launched now, because we're only launching them towards the end of the season. We probably won't have a full season after doing that. And then we're going to look at doing moving Betmate into another territory as well, to be decided. But as Ryan mentioned earlier, there's some places where we don't need a license that we could easily go to. There's other places that have like a similar appetite to the UK that would be an easier stepping stone to. And then there's the States as well. So gambling's just been legalised in the States, but it's a bit of a chaotic land grab at the minute over there. So
it's very expensive as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, just riff on that a little bit, because so not everywhere in America is like Las Vegas, right? That's a bit of a unique case.
Yeah, it's only recently as well. So, so previously, the only legal form of betting, they didn't call it betting, was daily fantasy sport. So essentially, our first game, you know, these huge companies, DraftKings and FanDuel in particular, and they would kind of conquer the US market. And then only in the last couple of years, they brought out state-by-state legislation for betting, and which allows you to kind of offer online gambling services, essentially. But yeah, that was kind of a slow rollout. But now what you see, you've had kind of Betfred go over there, William Hill, and then you've got obviously DraftKings and FanDuel that are now offering sportsbooks, casinos, slots through there, etc.
It's a strange one because our like pitch to the UK is bookies are boring, we're done with them, there's got to be something new and innovative, whereas in the US bookies are new and innovative because they haven't had them before, so probably off the cards, the US, but we'll look at some of the European ones and maybe stuff further afield.
There is some strange legislation in the US, considering it as the the hub of all democratic, free, prosperous tech development. Like the whole accredited investor thing as well. So I could walk into a casino in America and put 20 grand on red, but I couldn't put 20 grand into a startup in America. There's all sorts of hurdles to jump through to prove that I'm competent to do that, which I find very weird.
You've got to do the quiz on Cedars as well.
There is a quiz on Cedars, yeah. I can't remember if I passed. And so, and to facilitate that, you've talked about moving into potentially new territories as well as new game types. How do you find it building your company in the Liverpool ecosystem?
I'd say, a note on us building the company in general. So like, me and Ryan knew each other from working with each other previously. Dan, our other co-founder, who's not here, we both work with the same company. And for the first year of doing Betmate, it was us three, unpaid, getting it to a point of MVP prior to having the gambling license, so that we could get the license, get investment, and grow it. And then the rest of the team is all people that we know and have worked with in the past, not intentionally. It's just, we wanted known quantities, people that we knew what we were getting. We didn't want to go out into the market and pay recruiter fee and pay over the odds and get someone who wasn't going to really fit in with the culture of the team. So there's 8 of us now full time, and thankfully everyone that's in the team we've worked with in some capacity in the past, and we knew what we were getting. That probably doesn't scale beyond what we've done now. Yeah, that doesn't really scale beyond what we've done now. So it's difficult to really comment on growing a tech startup in Liverpool because some of our guys are remote. Remote St. Helens. The rest of them are all Liverpool based.
That is remote.
I would say that when we pitched to when kind of Johnny discovered Betmate, that was at a Liverpool City Region Angel Investment Network event. It was remote because it was during COVID. Yeah. So we obviously, that played a part in our first round for sure, which is great kind of to have that available. But then I think since we've come back from COVID, it seems like the ecosystem's really kind of stepped up a gear. Yeah. I think even things like this, Johnny, like the startup grind is great to slowly try and bring this community together. Yeah, there was none of this really that we were aware of when we were starting out, and I think the whole COVID timing was interesting because our lead investor Hatch, sounds bad this, I don't even know where they're based. We've only met them in a party in London once, right? Because we pitched them during COVID, and that kind of, I guess one of the positives that come from it from a business point of view is it leveled the playing field. It opened the floor up to really just connect with anyone over a Zoom call. And a lot of our angel investors, aren't from Liverpool or the Northwest, they're from all over the place because of us doing video calls and Zooms and all that. We got 2 out of 20 plus that are based in Liverpool.
It's interesting you say that. Well, Hatch is based in Lincoln, which is like
Peterborough.
East of England. Yeah.
So we wouldn't, pre-COVID, we wouldn't have naturally went to them first. We probably would have knocked on all the local Northwest doors first, been turned away and went elsewhere. So there's conflicting stats about that, because something that I never forget is during COVID I saw a presentation from Jenny Tooth at UK Business Angel Association, and there was this stat that I think 78 or 80% around that mark of all angel investor money is deployed within 25 miles of the angel investor's home postcode. And
I think that's probably true for the UK. I doubt that's true for America, and I doubt that's true for other markets. And I've got this like kind of weird conspiracy theory that I've been working on for years now, that the kind of legacy of like our old economy, how we do finance and banking, has had this kind of trickle down effect into how we manage money for more like risk on things like startups. And I think that there's characteristics of that which have hindered development. So on one hand, like I simultaneously believe it's true that a city the size of Liverpool, or a city region, if we're dealing in those units, absolutely needs its own angel network. But I simultaneously believe that as a startup, you should not go in a linear fashion. Well, I'll go around Liverpool, then I'll go across to Manchester, then I'll go to Leeds, and then Sheffield. I feel like you need to spin up like straight away an internationalized approach. And I have this conversation with every founder that I meet nowadays. I think absolutely, like, do all your local stuff to perfect what you're doing, to get into the flow, but just shoot for the moon. I hate that phrase. That's so cheesy.
Like
but yeah,
as well. So like there are some investors that, of course, won't be based in Liverpool, but can add tremendous value beyond just cash. So there might be having expertise in marketing, in legal, in whatever area that you might be weaker in. That you can find everywhere through LinkedIn. Like we've sourced a lot of angel investors through using LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And the network as well that one angel brings. I'm not sure the exact number, but I know our cap table, Ryan found us one angel investor, and that led to a conversation with another angel investor, and then 3 more angel investors. So just sometimes an individual who is well connected is maybe better than one large VC.
Yeah.
Yeah, we managed to probably end up about 6 or 7 individual investors from one single angel investor, which is always nice.
Definitely. And then, before we hand it over to audience Q&A, I just wondered if you had any like closing reflections about where you are, where you want to be, things you wish you'd done different. If you had a direct line to anyone, I don't know, the mayor, Sequoia Capital, whoever you want, what would give us some closing thoughts?
I think it's, for us, we really care about trying to change this industry, and sometimes we get tarnished with the same brush as traditional companies within the space. And I think for us it would be kind of asking people, potentially one of the names that you mentioned there, to kind of open their horizons a little bit, and not in a way that is shouting someone out, but if we want to change this industry for the better, as so many people want to, there's going to have to be a change in how we currently operate in it.
Yeah, and I guess like the biggest ongoing frustration for us as a business is just fundraising. It's probably every startup's biggest ongoing frustration, but we're fishing in a smaller pond of people who are willing to look at us and that we are a viable company for, just because of the category. Everyone talks about category disruptors and changing industries, but then you can't really change an industry without being in that industry and flipping on its head. That's just my small fundraising rant, I guess, at the end.
I love it. Well, thank you very much for coming along and doing this, and it's it's a real privilege to be able to give you a little bit of a platform and just shout out about what you do. I think it's fantastic. I've obviously put my money where my mouth is, but I'm really excited by what you're doing. I really believe in the mission. I think it's fun. I think it's a good balance, and I'm a passionate champion of what you're doing and trailblazing for the Liverpool ecosystem. So please put your hands together for Declan and Ryan from Betmate.